is a ton of videos out there on the YouTubes that talk about how to tie knots. The problem is they're not organized in any sort of logical way that would allow you to understand when you should use one knot over another or when you should use what rig over another depending on your fishing situation. Well, hello again, Fishalots. I'm John with Fishing with Johnny Fishalot, and I want to take you on a journey of knots and rigging for every inshore fishing application that you may find yourself into. By the end of this episode, you'll know not only how to tie knots, but you'll know when to use certain knots and when to avoid certain knots, when to use certain rigs and when to avoid certain rigs, depending on how you're looking to fish and the fish are after. So stay tuned, and of course, let's get into it, Fishalot style. And all right, so let's get started with some knots. And so we'll start with the loop knots, then we'll move on to what I like to call clinch knots or clinch style knots. We'll go to SNELL knots, and then line-to-line connections, and then I'll show you the rig. So first up, let's talk about the surgeon's loop knot. This is one of the more common loop knots that people know and use, and this is a great knot for rigging. So your first step, of course, is to fold the line over itself, just like that. Let me give myself some more line here. And then you're gonna take this first loop you just made, and you're gonna create a second loop. So there's your second loop, here's your first loop, and you're just gonna pass the first loop through 2 times. That's it. And you should end up with something like that. And that's your surgeon's loop knot. You just tighten it up and you're good to go. That's it. And this is what I mean by it's a really good knot for rigging. So basically if you wanted to attach a weight or something like that, like here's just a standard 4-ounce weight, you simply put the knot through, pull the weight up, and there you go, you're attached, just like that. If you want to take the weight off, you simply push the loop through again, and you take it off. That's a surgeon's loop knot, quick and easy. Let's talk about the figure of 8 loop knot. And this loop knot is just as easy to tie as a surgeon's loop knot, only it adds a few extra benefits. So you're gonna start the knot the exact same way. You're just gonna fold your line over, and then you're gonna make your second loop, just like that. So you have your first loop, you have your second loop. Now in this step, the difference is you're actually going to twist the second loop towards yourself, just like that. You can see you're kind of creating a figure 8 right there as you twist it toward yourself. Then you're going to take your first loop and pass it through that twist you just created. That will create what it looks like a figure 8, hence the figure 8 loop knot. If you do that and you get something like a figure 8, you know you did it correctly, cinch it down, and you're done with your knot. And it's literally just that easy to tie. So here's your figure 8 loop knot. And here is your surgeon's loop knot. Now, you could tell right off the bat by looking at these 2 knots that the surgeon's loop knot has a little bit of a kink to it, a little bit of a turn. See, this is a figure 8 loop knot, and it's perfectly straight coming off the main line. This is your surgeon's loop knot, and you can see this curve in the line, and that's just the way the knots cinch. So if rig tidiness is important to you, I would recommend going with the figure of 8 loop knot versus the surgeon's loop knot. Now, the figure of 8 loop knot also adds an additional benefit in the fact that it's just a little bit stronger than the surgeon's loop knot. So the surgeon's loop knot is just a great and easy way to attach swivels or rigging, but the figure of 8 loop knot is really good if you're doing something like carp fishing and you need your rigging to be perfectly straight, laying in the muck or the mire, not sticking up at all, being limited in the amount that fish can detect the line. And again, same applications hold true with the figure 8 knot as the surgeon's loop knot. You have a weight, you have swivels, you can simply pass this through, and there you go. You're all connected, you're rigged up, ready to go. If you want to take the weight off, same thing, you pass it through. The same thing applies for swivels, you're good to go. They're just excellent loop knots for rigging. A general rule of thumb is when you're tying the same knot from monofilament or fluorocarbon to braid, you're generally going to want to double your wraps. So for a surgeon's loop knot on monofilament, I did 2 wraps and you're good. This knot will hold. This is a pretty strong knot. Now, if you're doing it on braid, you have to do more wraps. So if I did 2 on the monofilament, I want to do at least 4, but I'm going to go 5 just to be safe on braid. And so here's the braid, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. And again, you end up with something very similar as you did when you tied the loop knot on the monofilament. And you're just going to tighten it up. And these extra wraps prevent the braid from slipping. So there you go. There's your loop knot. Now that is a very strong braid surgeon's loop knot. And the reason why you're going to do more wraps is because the braid is so much thinner than the monofilament. Even heavy braid has a very low diameter. So what you want to do is you want to make extra wraps so that the braid does not slip on itself and slip through the knot. Now, with a figure 8 loop knot, you don't have to worry about it slipping. You simply fold your line, and this is one of the exceptions to the rule, right? Because this is just the way the knot cinches down. So same thing, you're going to fold your line towards yourself, you're going to pass that first loop through, and there you go. There's your figure 8 that we talked about. You know you did it right. You cinch it down, and that knot is just as strong in braid the exact same way you tie it for mono. There's not going to be any slipping here, and that's because of the way the knot cinches down on itself. Hey, if you're getting value out of this video already, I'd really appreciate it if you smash that like button or gently scroll that mouse over and click that like button. This way this video could share to more Fishalots out there to help them catch more fish. And all right, so we covered the surgeon's loop knot and we covered the figure of 8 knot. Now let's get to the dropper loop knot. Now the dropper loop knot is an essential knot for tying your rigging with hooks. So basically if you have like a high-low rig or something like that, this is the knot you're really going to want to take a look at. So all you do is you're going to fold your line over itself, just like that. And what I like to do is grab it with my 2 middle fingers. Okay, just like that. And now you have this X here, the 2 top pieces of your line, and quite simply just going to twist them. You twist them 5 or 6 times. Again, another general rule of thumb here is if you're ever in doubt of how much to twist your line, a good rule of thumb is anywhere from 5 to 7 times usually won't steer you wrong. So now we have about 5 or 6 wraps in here, and we have this circle, this loop. And all you're going to do is open up that loop with your index finger and your thumb, and you're going to grab the bottom line and push it on through. Now at this point, I like to grab this with my teeth, this part right here with my teeth, and pull it through. But for the purposes of this video, I just want to show you how it cinches down. So I could use my finger there. I'm going to cinch it down just like that. And there you go. There's your dropper loop knot. Now the benefit of this knot is look how straight this comes off of the main body of your line. So when you're putting your hooks on a high-low rig or a Kentucky rig or anything like that, it's super easy. You just pinch the loop here. You grab your hook right here. You put it through. You wrap it. And now look how neat that hook is coming off the line. So you're not going to get tangles with this because it's not hanging down close to the main line. So if this is the part with the weight on it, it's on the ground just like this. You can see that hook, no matter how much you try to tangle it, is not going to tangle up with your main line. And that is the huge advantage of the dropper loop knot for bait fishing, essentially. And now another little trick here to a dropper loop knot is you notice you just stick your hook through the loop once and pull it through. Well, if you want even a little bit more of a secure fitting to that, you just simply twist your line just like that and now put the hook through it. So now what happens is that line is even that much more secured. And that's what you do. You just twist it, and then as you pull it tight, you could tell that that line is wrapped around the shank of the hook now. Now this hook is that much more secured to your main line, and it's just as easy to take off. You simply push the knot through and push it through the hook. And there you have it. Comes off just like that, and you could swap out your hooks. And another tip I could offer you Fishalots for this dropper loop knot is the hooks. What I like to do is buy a hook with a curve in the shank, and the reason for this is I want this hook to be on my rig perfectly straight so that I can present my baits as naturally as possible to the fish. And the way I do that is you buy a hook with a little bend in the shank, just like I showed you. You're going to take your dropper loop knot and you're going to fit it through the eye going away from the barbs of the hook or from the point of the hook. Just like that, you're going to slide it down, put the hook through, and now look at that. That is a straight hook right in alignment with my main line. And there you go. So with that little trick, you can ensure that your hooks are baited perfectly straight on your dropper loop knots, and this will allow you to have a much more natural presentation to your baits to those fish, hopefully triggering even more bites. So that's a quick little tip right there on the dropper loop knots. And all right, let's round out our conversation of loop knots with my personal favorite, and that is the non-slip loop knot. Now this knot is perfect for your lures. Anytime you have a lure where you're going to tie a line directly to a lure without a ring or a swivel or a fisherman's clip, this is the knot to use because it will allow maximum maneuverability of your swim bait with the loop that's going to go around the side of the hook. So let me show you the non-slip loop knot, and it's one of the easier ones to tie as well. So first step, you're just going to create the easiest of all knots, and that is just an overhand knot, just like that. So there you go, you just create an overhand knot, and you want this about the size of your fingernail, your pinky fingernail, or a penny or an M&M, something like that. And so now you're going to take the other end of your line, you're going to take your lure and pass it through the eye of the hook, just like that. And so now a super important aspect of this knot that gets overlooked is you have to make sure you see which way your line is coming through your loop. So in this case, the line is going through my loop towards the lure away from me. So that's the same direction I want to take my tag end and put it through the loop. Okay, so you just want to make sure your line is going in the same exact direction. So it should look something like that. Okay, so that's how you should have it. You see the line, both my tag end and the main line are going in the same side of the loop. Okay, and let me show you a really important aspect of this knot. You see the tag end right here, that is facing the knot itself. You see how it's facing down? So I left this a little bit long just to show you for illustration purposes, but this is a totally weedless knot. The fact that you tied this and now this tag end is facing towards your lure makes it weedless. So when you cut the tag end off, this little piece is not going to hang up on debris, on weeds, on anything like that, and it's great. And the other benefit, of course, is this little loop connection that we made right here does not restrict the motion of the lure whatsoever, as you can tell right there. It's totally free to move in the most natural way possible in order to trigger as many bites as you possibly can. This is an absolute perfect connection for any knot that you're going to tie directly to a lure. I would recommend the non-slip loop knot. And that rounds out the loop knots, Fishalots. Let's go ahead and move on to the clinch style knots. Well, all right, Fishalots, I'm going to give you 2 tips right off the bat that you could use for any rig and any knot. Number 1 is whatever you tie for monofilament, you have to double up the wraps for braid. Okay, generally speaking, if you're tying a uni knot and you're doing 5 wraps on mono, you do 10 wraps on braid. The other one, and let's get controversial here, is you don't have to stick your line in your mouth. You have to stick your hook in your mouth. You don't have to wet your line in order to cinch it up just right. Back in the day, that was a thing because monofilament wasn't made as strong and as smooth as it is today. Take my word for it. I fished 30 years. 8 of those years were spent professionally fishing, where I had to fish every single day in order to make money. So I just want to throw those 2 things out there really fast. So all right, that wraps up the loop knots pretty nicely. Let's move on to clinch style knots. So there is something called a clinch knot, and then we're going to cover the PALOMAR knot and the TRILENE knot, which I'm going to refer to all of them as clinch style knots. And that's because these knots will cinch directly onto your lure. So here's a ring of a lure. It's going to cinch down on that, the exact opposite of how I showed you with the non-slip loop knot. So now all these clinch knots for lures, I would highly recommend using them when you have rings on lures, or you're going to use something like a fisherman's clip. Okay, so starting with the clinch knot, this is going to be very easy to tie. So you're simply going to put your line up through the hook or the lure, whatever you're tying, and you're going to look something like that. Now you're just going to twist. Whatever it is, could be your lure, could be your hook, you're going to twist about 5 to 7 times. Again, a good general rule of thumb is if you're out on the water and you're like, oh man, I forget, how much should I twist this line? Again, 5 to 7 times, you'll never go wrong. Now all you do is you take your tag end right here and you're going to pass it through this loop you created right above your hook or your lure. You're going to grab that just like that, and now you're just going to cinch it down. And that is the clinch knot. There it is. Super easy, super simple. This is the knot that I think most people start out learning, And it's good reason for that. It's just an easy, effective knot. Now, this knot does have its limitations. It's not as strong as some of these other knots. And so I'm going to show you a quick tip to improve the clinch knot. So now to improve your clinch knot, we're going to tie the improved clinch knot. So basically, you're going to just tie a clinch knot the same as you did before. Here's your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to take your tag end and pass it through the loop you just made, but now you have a second loop, right here. You're going to take that tag end and you're going to pass it through the second loop, just like that. You're going to hold on to that tag end and you're going to cinch it all down. And that is the improved clinch knot. All right, so jumping right into the polymer knot. This is another fan favorite because of how easy it is to tie and how strong it is for connecting your line to lures or hooks. So quite simply, all you're going to do is fold the line over just like you did the surgeon's loop knot or the figure of 8 loop knot. And you're going to come up with this loop right here. You're going to take that loop and you're going to pass it through the eye of whatever you're tying. It could be a hook or a lure. In this case, we're going to use my trusty old crankbait. There you go. Pass it right through. You're going to have something like that. Next, what you're going to do is you're just going to form another loop in the line coming out of the lure, just like that. And you're going to pass your first loop through your second loop. Sound familiar? It should. And there you go. So now you should end up with something like this. I'm not going to cinch this down all the way because I need a little bit of bend for when I cinch down the knot. So now I just created a loop just like this for my polymer knot, and you're going to quite simply put your lure through the loop, just like that. And you're going to end up with 2 loops around the eye of your hook, just like that. You're going to cinch it all down, pull in on your main line. You're going to cinch it all down, just like that. And that's how quickly it cinches down, and that's how easy the polymer knot is to tie. So you're basically just going to clean this up a little bit as I hook my tablecloth, which I'm trying to film over. And there you go. There's the polymer knot. It's a super easy, super strong knot connection. All right, so let me get into some of the limitations. And I just showed you how to tie it, and you know, it's pretty convenient. You simply make a loop, you put your lure through it, and you cinch down the knot. So that's all well and good, except for bam! But what happens if you have something big like this? This is a 7-inch little dock meant for striper fishing and muskie fishing, and it's a huge lure. Look at the comparison there. This is gigantic compared to the lure that we just used the polymer knot for. Now, the polymer knot is really easy for smaller lures or even things like fishing clips like this, because you simply tie it and you cinch it down and you're good to go because you have to pass this through the loop. However, something this big, I mean, the loop you have to make is just large. So here you go. You're going to fold over your line just like you did before. You're going to pass your line through the eye just like that. But now the loop you're going to have to make has got to be gigantic to pass this lure and the hooks through it. Now you could do it, and so if you prefer the polymer knot over other knots, go right ahead. But there's an easier way, and that is the TRILENE knot. So first step is first, you're going to take your line, you're going to pass it through the eye, and then you're going to do the exact same thing twice, creating a loop. Okay? Just like that. So now you have a loop, and you have your main line and your tag end. Next, you're going to take your tag end, and you're going to wrap it around your main line, just like this. You do this about, again, 5 to 7 times. That's your general rule here. So we did that about 5 times. And now you have your loop and you have your tag end. You're just going to pass it through the loop you just created, just like that. And that is the TRILENE knot. That's it. There we go. Cinch it down. And that's your knot. So now many will argue that this TRILENE knot is actually stronger than the polymer knot. I will say I watched some tutorials on strength tests. These people, they have machines and stuff that test them. And the breaking strength of the TRILENE knot is like 1/2 pound to 1 pound heavier than the polymer knot. but both knots are incredibly strong. The polymer knot, usually breaking strength that I've seen is around like 19 to 20 pounds if you're using 10-pound test line, and the TRILENE knot is 20 to 21 pounds, something like that. So they're very comparable. The main advantage to the TRILENE knot over the polymer knot is that you don't have to pass lures through a loop that you created, so it's a little less burdensome and a little easier to tie. And the TRILENE knot is definitely one of my favorites whenever I'm heading out fishing. All right, so that was the TRILENE knot, and we're gonna stick with this giant 9-inch plug used for very big fish. I'm gonna show you another alternative to the polymer and TRILENE knot. Now, this knot is by far the most versatile knot I'm gonna discuss in this video. And if you are to learn just one of these knots, this is gonna be the one, and that is the uni knot. So quite simply, the uni knot, you're just gonna pass your line through, you're gonna create a loop just like that, and you're gonna pass your tag end through the loop, again, 5 to 7 times. So 1, I'm just gonna do this quick, 2, 3, 4, 5. There you go. You should end up with something like this, and you're just going to cinch it on down, and that's it. That's a uni knot. And look how clean and nice that got on that lure right there. Again, I don't have to wet the line. There's no curves in there. There's no kinks or nicks or burning. There's no reason to wet the line in there. And of course, I don't want to stick something with this big a hook anywhere near my mouth or my throat, right? So this is, again, another good reason why you don't have to stick fishing equipment in your mouth in order to secure a tight line. And that's a uni knot. That's one of the easiest knots to use, and this is just as strong as the polymer or the TRILENE knot. So there's our first introduction to the uni knot, and let's move into our line-to-line connections, and we'll start with the double uni knot. Here's another great use for a uni knot, is connecting braid to monofilament. Now, again, if there's one knot to learn in line-to-line connections, it would again be the uni knot. The advantage of the uni knot is that it can connect mono to mono, fluoro to braid. It doesn't matter the line type. This uni knot will work just as good with any of the lines. So again, let's start with the double uni knot in a line-to-line connection. So first, we're going to take our braid and our mono, and we're going to cross them. So the tag ends are going to be facing opposite directions, just like that. Let's do the mono side first. So it's the same exact thing that we made with the lure. You're simply going to make a loop around the braid, just like that. And you're going to take your tag end and wrap it around the braid 5 to 7 times. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there's your 5 wraps. It's going to look something like this. Now at this point, since you have 4 lines, what you're going to do is you're going to grab each tag end and each main line, and you're going to pull them all simultaneously to get a good wrap on it. Now, if it looks like that and it hasn't quite cinched up just right, don't worry about it. At the end of the knot, when you pull everything tight, this knot will rub up against the braided knot and will cinch itself against each other. So let's show you the braided side now. So now you go with the braid side, and again, rule of thumb here, if you did 5 wraps on the mono side, you're going to do double the wraps on the braid side. So we're looking at about 10 wraps on this side. So let's get to it. If you don't do double the wraps, the braid will slip. Again, just to reiterate, monofilament is so much denser, it's so much thicker than the braid, and braid is so thin, if you use the same amount of wraps, it'll generally slip on itself. So you want to do double the wraps from braid to monofilament. And there you go, that's about it. So there's about 10 wraps. I kind of lost count because I was talking and doing this at the same time. And again, you're going to cinch it all down, just like that. And there's your braid connection. Now watch. You see the braid connection and the mono connection isn't quite tight just yet. But now when we pull, these lines are going to come together and they're going to cinch up really tight. There it is. And now that's a tightly cinched down mono to braid connection right there that is not going to slip. And of course, another advantage to the double uni knot right here as we see it is this is a thin knot. So as you're about to see, I'm going to show you the Alberto and the ALBRIGHT knot. And what you have to do with both of those knots is fold the mono over itself and then tie the knot. So these knots are going to be a little bit thicker than the double uni knot. So the double uni knot is just your overall go-to line connection knot. It's not the thinnest knot, it's not the strongest knot, but it's definitely one of the easiest to tie. It's definitely very strong, and it's low in diameter. All right, next up, let's talk about the ALBRIGHT knot. Now, the ALBRIGHT knot is a very easy line-to-line connection. It's very useful, and it's very strong. Now, the one disadvantage to it, though, of course, like I just mentioned for the uni knot, is in order to make this knot, you have to fold it over itself, just like that. So the knot itself is going to be a little bit thicker. So as you reel it through the guides of your rod, it could weaken the knot. The more the knot hits the guides, the weaker it's going to get, as well as the fact that, if you are under quite a bit of pressure, let's say you're fighting a big fish, it could also damage the inserts on your guides. But let me show you the ALBRIGHT knot. There is a lot of advantages to it in that it's just so simple and so strong of a knot. So your first step here is you're going to fold that line over itself. You're going to pass the braid through it. Now, I like to pinch the braid and the loop just like this, so I have control over the braid as I work my way down the folded leader material. I'm then going to grab the braid down the folded leader material just like this, and I'm going to start wrapping the braid towards the loop we just made. Okay, again, I'm just going to wrap it like this. I'm going to do 5 to 7 knots, just like I've been showing you. No different here. There you go. I think that's 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's call it a day right there. Now, here's the important part of the ALBRIGHT knot. You want to make sure that whatever direction the line is heading into the knot, that your tag end is going to head out of. So you can see right here, the line's heading in this way. I'm going to take the tag end and I'm going to move it in the same direction as the main line. So it should look just like this. And now we're just going to cinch it down. You're going to grab both ends, cinch it down, and there you go. It's as easy as that. That is the ALBRIGHT knot. So again, you can see it's very neat. You can see the mono is folded over, so it's a little bit thicker than the uni knot, but this is a tremendously strong connection between braid to mono. You could use this mono to fluoro, same thing like a uni knot. It's a very versatile way to do a line-to-line connection. Now, I don't believe this knot is as strong as the uni knot, and I have a way to improve this, and it's called the Alberto knot. So let's get right into the Alberto knot, and I'll show you, just like the improved clinch knot, how to make this a little bit stronger. All right, now let's talk about the Alberto knot. Now the Alberto knot has one extra step in it from the ALBRIGHT knot that makes it just that much stronger of a knot. So we're going to start the knot the exact same way. We're going to fold over this monofilament. And again, that's going to be a disadvantage to this knot, is that it's going to be a little bit thicker because you're folding over this mono. But hey, if you're looking to use this in place of swivels, which I recommend everybody do, there's really no reason to have a lot of swivels if you know these knots. That's a perfect application of the Alberto knot if you're not planning to reel this through the eyes of your rod as much. So then you're going to take your braid, just like the ALBRIGHT knot, and you're going to pass it through that loop you just created. Now with the Alberto knot, you want to make sure you give yourself plenty of room on the tag end, because you're going to do 2 wraps with this, unlike the ALBRIGHT knot. So again, I'm going to take my thumb and index finger, I'm going to pinch this line together. And now, here's the difference. I'm going to wrap the line, my braid, down the leader, the monofilament leader. Now this is a change from the ALBRIGHT knot. All we did with the ALBRIGHT knot was just start wrapping towards the loop. Here we go again. We're going to do 5 wraps or so. Pretty simple. Nothing to it. And there you go. So now you'll notice I have a little bit of separation in my wraps. Now I'm doing that on purpose because what I'm going to do is now I'm going to wrap in the opposite direction, and I want to fill in these wraps. So I don't want the wraps to overlap. I want this to be neat, and I don't want to make the knot any bigger than it has to be, because again, that is one of the disadvantages to this knot. And I'm just going to keep wrapping in between. Oh, see, I almost did it there. in between the wraps that we just created. And there we go. So it should look something like that. You see, it's nice and neat. None of the wraps are over each other, and this is how you want it to look. Now, these double wrapping is what makes this knot stronger than the ALBRIGHT knot. So I'm going to pinch this again. Again, another rule of thumb is you want to make sure whichever direction your line is heading into your loop, that you're also going to have your tag end come out. So you can see the line is wrapped around right here, so I'm going to go underneath the loop, just like this. And this way, see that? Now this way, both my lines are heading in the same direction outside of the loop. Now I'm going to grab the tag ends of both, and I'm going to start cinching it down, just like that. It's going to come nice and neat, just like that. And that is the ALBERTO knot. That is a very strong line-to-line connection between your braid and your monofilament. All right, so now I just showed you the ALBERTO knot, the ALBRIGHT knot, and the double uni knot. Let's get to one of my favorites, and this is going to be the strongest braid to monofilament or braid to fluorocarbon connection you could make without a tool. And it's also going to be the smallest in diameter, and that's going to be the FG knot. All right, and that brings us to the FG knot. Now, the FG knot has a couple of benefits to it over the ALBRIGHT, the ALBERTO, and the double uni knot. One of which is this is the thinnest line-to-line connection out of any of the knots that we talked about, and it's also the strongest. And at the end of this knot, I'm going to show you why. So first step in tying the FG knot is you're just going to fold over your line, just like this. So the reason why I do that is because I'm going to wrap the line around my pinky and then around my index finger, and then I'm going to create tension in that loop right there. And that tension that I'm creating with my thumb and my index finger is going to be essential for making sure that this braid wraps around this monofilament. And if the braid doesn't dig into the mono, quite frankly, the knot just fails. It doesn't work. And that's a lot of what you hear people's frustration about with the FG knot, is that the knot failed because they failed to dig in the braid to the mono. Okay, so that's it. So I have tension with my two fingers, and the tension with the mono is being provided by my foot. That's right, I'm just stepping on the spool, and that creates a tension in the monofilament. This way, you don't need a rod holder, you don't need a cleat, you don't need to tie this around a desk in your house or anything like this. You could tie this in a kayak anywhere you want. This is just the best way to do it, in my opinion. So now the first step in this knot is just simply wrap this mono around the braid and catch it with your middle finger, just like that. And that's your first wrap of the FG knot. And then you're going to do it again, like that. And then you're going to do it. You're going to keep alternating both ways, just like that. You're going to catch it with your middle finger and then rotate it, just like that. Now, ideally, this knot will take about 17 wraps to secure. So you can get away with a little bit under or a little bit over, but 17 wraps is really a good number to aim for. And so we'll just keep going here. And I'll speed this up. So you could tell as you get more familiar with this knot, you could tie it pretty quick. You could definitely tie this knot under a minute. It's a little bit more steps than the ALBRIGHT and the ALBERTO knot, even the uni knot, but it really is a good knot. And this, again, the reason why this knot is going to be so strong, which I'm going to show you here in a minute, is quite frankly, all these wraps you see me going around the mono, they're all going to dig into the mono equally as I apply pressure on the knot. So that's why this is so strong, is because this braid is going to dig into this mono. Here, look at that. See the braid digging into the mono? It's going to dig into the mono all the way through the knot. And I really like this double finger method because you could tell how tight those wraps are around the monofilament. There's no gaps. It's right next to each other. It's right on top of each other. It's clean. It's neat. It makes for a really good knot. Now, I totally lost count of how many wraps that was, so we're going to call it 17 just for the purposes of this video. Okay, next step, you're going to unravel yourself there, so to speak, and there's your beginnings of your FG knot. Now what you do is you have your tag line right here. what you're going to do is you're just going to create, you're going to secure those wraps with just a simple hitch, half hitch. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word there. Just a half hitch knot, just like that, and you're going to secure the line, just like that. Okay, now you could even do a second one. You know what? It's good to alternate wraps, actually, just to make sure you get a good connection. So here's going to be my second half hitch. Okay. Tighten that down. There we go. My second half hitch. So here we go. Here's my second half hitch. Getting secured there. Okay, now that you secured this section of the knot with the 2 half hitches and the beginnings of the FG knot, this is the all-important step. The all-important step is to wrap the line around your hand. So I recommend using a shirt or something like that because the line can cut you. But the goal is you want to really put a lot of pressure on this line to make sure that the braid bites into the monofilament. And again, braid can cut you pretty bad, so I would recommend a shirt or something. However, I'm just going to do this just because of the fact of filming, and so you could thank me later if I start bleeding. But here we go. You really want to take some strong wraps in here with the braid especially. I'm going to tighten it even more. And just be careful because this braid will cut you. See, there it goes. I just saw it bite. Okay, there we go. And now I could see the braid biting into the monofilament. You probably can't see it on the camera, but now that the braid is biting into the mono, the pressure of the weight is now being distributed through this entire knot. And that's why it's so strong. And that's why it's such a great knot. Now, something else to take a look at, we're almost done with it, is look how narrow that knot is. Like, look how lean that is. It's just going over the monofilament. So this is basically just an extension of your braid main line. You could reel this through the eyes of through the guides of your rod. You're not going to damage your inserts. This is a super narrow, super strong knot. And so to finish off the knot, basically you could do 2 more half hitches and you're done. You could do 3 more. You could do a half a uni knot. There's lots of ways to finish off the knot, but for me, 2 half hitches work just fine. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So here you go, 2 half hitches. There you go. And your knot is secured. And that is the FG knot in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen. And Fishalots, if you're getting value out of this video, make sure to smash that like button or gently scroll that mouse over the like button and click it so that this video can share to more Fishalots out there that need some help with their knots and know when to use each knot, when not to use them, and how to maximize their time out on the water and catch more fish. And all right, Fishalots, here's a disadvantage of the FG knot in comparison to the other knots. It only works if you're using a thinner diameter braid mainline to a much thicker diameter monofilament or fluorocarbon leader line. So basically, if you have a 10-pound braid main line, you would tie this knot to like a 20-pound monofilament line. Something where the diameter in the mono or the fluoro is great enough that this braid could bite into it. If you're using very heavy braid line that's higher in diameter, you probably shouldn't tie it to a 20-pound leader material of monofilament or something of similar diameter because it just won't bite. So that's a disadvantage. You can't use this mono to mono. You can't use this fluoro to mono or anything like that. It has to be a smaller diameter braid line to a thicker monofilament or fluorocarbon leader line. But the advantage is this is by far the narrowest knot. It's pretty easy to tie. As you just told, you could tie this easily under a minute, and it's the strongest connection you could have. So all right, Fishalots, let's move on to snelling your hooks. All right, now Fishalots, I'm going to show you how to snell a hook using the all-versatile uni knot. That's right, you guessed it. The uni knot is just such a great tool in your toolbox when it comes to rigging your gear, snelling hooks, connecting your lines, you name it, it's a great knot. So first step is you're going to feed the line through the eye of the hook, and then you're going to pinch it up against the shank of the hook. Next, you're going to make that all-important loop So just like that. Now you're going to take this line, just like I showed you before, and you're going to make your wraps around the line and the shank of the hook. And this is the uni knot. So again, 5 to 7 wraps is perfect. That's 5 right there. We'll do 6 just for good measure. And there you have it. So now you pinch the wraps and you're going to pull the other end, which is going to secure the knot. Just like that. That is the uni knot and a great way to snell your hook. Now, if you want to do more wraps than that, that's perfectly fine. But this knot is not going anywhere. That is a uni knot snelled hook. And again, if you're going to learn one knot here, Fishalots, out of this whole video, the uni knot is by far the most versatile of the group. Next up is my absolute favorite way to snell a hook, and that is the knotless knot. This is just a fabulous knot. It has never failed me, and it's by far the easiest way to snell your hook. So the first step is you're going to take your tag end of your line, and you're going to feed it through the eye of the hook going away from the hook point. That's going to be important here, and I'm going to show you why. So next, you're going to pinch the line against the shaft, and then you're just going to start wrapping. That's it. This is basically the knot. You're just going to wrap it just like that, keeping it neat as you can to the hook. And again, if you're confused, about 7 wraps or so will do it. That's a little more than 7, which is fine. And then your next step is you're going to take the opposite end of your tag end. Okay, you have to cut your however long you want the leader to be, and you're going to feed it through the eye of the hook going towards the hook itself right here. And that's it. That is the knotless knot. You cinch it down and look how strong that knot is. Now, a great thing about this knot is you see how it comes out of the eye of the hook. So basically, when a fish grabs the hook, this is going to turn the hook in their mouth. This is a circle hook. That's why it's important to come out on the hook side. We use this knot all the time for carp fishing via hair rigs, which again is going to turn that hook right into the bottom of the carp's mouth. Here you go. If here's the hook and you pull it, see how it turns it against my hand? Okay, here's the line coming out of the hook. I'm going to turn it and it catches immediately. There you go. That is why this is just such a great knot. And you should do this with any of your snells. If you're using a uni knot for this, do the same thing. Have the line coming out of the hook, of the eye of the hook, towards the hook point itself. And those are 2 quick and easy ways to snell your hooks. And really, what else do you need? And again, just like I said earlier in the video, these knots or these snells are going to work just as good with braid line. The only difference is you're going to have to double up the wraps because the braid's diameter is so much smaller. So let's do the knotless knot first. Here you go. You slip it through. Same exact thing. Now you're going to start making your wraps. Make them nice and neat. Only this time, instead of 7 or 8 wraps, you're going to do a lot more. And that's, again, so that the braid doesn't slip through the knot. And there you go. That's about 10. We're going to double it up. I usually do 7 for knotless knot, so I'm going to do 14, just like that. And now look at all those wraps. This knot is not going to go anywhere. Next, of course, you're going to feed it through towards the hook point, right? Because you want that hook to turn. We're going to tighten it down. And there you go. Again, the same concept is going to hold true for the uni knot. I'm going to feed the knot in the same way as the knotless knot. And again, I'm going to do this because I want this piece of the line pulling towards the hook itself so that this turns in the fish's mouth. So for the uni knot, I'm just going to make a loop with my braid, just like that. And again, I did about 5 wraps with the uni knot first time, so I'm going to do double the amount. I'm going to do 10 just to make sure the braid doesn't slip. And here we go. So I think it was 3 or 4. I think this is close to 10. Again, it's tough to count and talk and tie a knot at the same time for the YouTubes, but I think this is it. And now all you're going to do is you're going to pull the knot tight, just like that. It's going to cinch down on itself. Pull it up to the shank of the hook, and there you go. There's your uni knot with braid with double the wraps. And again, that line is going to come out from the eye to the hook itself so that it turns this hook in the fish's mouth to ensure your increased hook sets. So now at this point of the video, I just want to express to all you fishalots out there that so much of fishing is personal preference. So yes, I'm going to show you the knots and the rigs and what I'm recommending for each fishing situation. And there are some very significant benefits to using some of these rigs and knots over others, depending how you want to fish. However, if your confidence is that the clinch knot is the best thing in the world and you're not going to sleep easy at night using the Palomar knot, then by all means use the clinch knot. You know, if you feel like the FG knot is just not going to work for you, by all means use the ALBRIGHT or ALBERTO knot. It's just totally up to your preference. But what I want to do is I want to provide to you the benefits, or let's say the risk versus gain analysis, so that you can make determinations on what you need work on and what can work best for you when you meet certain fishing conditions that you know have given you trouble in the past. All right, now that I showed you all the knots, let me show you how these knots work together in order to form a variety of rigs. Now, the number one thing to keep in mind when you're deciding on what rig you should use for what situation is, where is your fish's strike zone? Is the fish strike zone suspended in the water column? Is it on the bottom of the water column? That's basically going to determine which one of these rigs you're going to use to catch your fish. So let's start with the high-low rig, of course. Now for the high-low rig, the top and the bottom of the rig can be up to you. I'm going to start off with a surgeon's loop knot, just like I showed you, the very first knot, as we come full circle and land this plane. And there you go. So there's your surgeon's loop knot. Super quick, super easy. That's where your weight is going to go. Next up, I'm going to move up maybe about 4 to 6 inches. It just depends, again, where that fish's strike zone is, how close to the bottom you want your hook. And I'm going to make my first dropper loop knot. So here we go. We're going to make 5 to 6 twists. Open it up. Grab the bottom. This time I am going to use my teeth. There you go. Cinched it down. It's just so much easier to use your teeth because I don't have 3 hands. Okay, and so there's the first point. That's where your hook is going to go. Now I'm going to make the second dropper loop knot. I'm going to come up to my line. Same thing. I'm going to twist. Pull the line through. I'm going to use my teeth again. Second knot done. It literally takes that quick to make a dropper loop knot. And then at the top, you know what, just to switch it up a little bit, let's use a figure of 8 knot to keep it neat and tidy at the top. So again, you're going to fold it. There's my first loop. There's my second loop. You're going to turn it, pass it through. You know you did it right if you have a figure 8, which that is. Tighten it up, and there you go. That's where your swivel goes. And that's it. That's your rig. Let's put all the terminal tackle on it, and we'll show you how it looks. First up is going to be the swivel. Here's my swivel. Push it on through. And there you go, top of your rig, secured right there. Next, go down to your first dropper loop knot. We're going to add a hook. Here you go. Again, I like hooks with the bends in them, so keep it straight. Pass it through. There you go. So there's your first hook. Okay, I'm going to go down to my second dropper loop knot, add my second hook. There we go. Pass it through. Even again, and then the bottom is going to be my weight. There's my weight. Here's my loop. And there you go, Fishalots. There's your high-low rig, and it's just that easy to make a rig using the knots I just showed you. This is a rig solely made with loop knots, and it's a highly effective rig anytime you're using bait in order to catch a fish. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the Kentucky rig, and this may not surprise you, but this rig is very similar to the high-low rig. Again, the whole reason why I'm showing you these knots and loop knots and how to connect your hooks and different things like this is because if you master these knots, you could basically use any rig, anytime, any location of fish, depending on where you're looking to present your baits in the strike zone. So first you determine where the fish are, next you determine the strike zone, and then you could really pounce on these rigs and use them to maximize your time out on the water. Okay, and so the first step, and this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody out there, is you're going to secure the weight to your line using one of the loop knots that we previously discussed. So in this case, I'm just going to tie a surgeon's loop knot. I'm going to fold it over just like that. Again, put it under once, put it under twice, and there you go. So that's my surgeon's loop knot. That's where my weight is going to go. So next, I'm just going to attach a dropper loop knot. And this dropper loop knot, I'm going to want to have close to the surgeon's loop knot because I actually want my line extended away from my main line, but closer to the bottom. So there's two ways to do this. The first way is to actually create quite a large dropper loop knot. You see that? That is going to be a very long dropper loop knot, and the longer you make the knot just depends on how big this loop is. So you can tell this is going to be a pretty long one, and don't worry, you're going to tie it the exact same way. You're going to secure it with your two middle fingers, and you're going to twist this line just like this. Again, 5 to 7 times will be fine. Next is you're going to take the bottom piece of the line, just like we did before, and you're going to bring it through the knot. Now look how big that dropper loop knot is going to be compared to the last ones. I'm going to use my teeth here. Again, I'm going to pull it through. There you go. And now that's a big dropper loop knot. So now you could tell when you put the hook on this, you could tell it's going to be very close to the bottom where my weight is. And that is essentially the Kentucky rig. So let's take our weight. We're going to secure it. Okay, just like that. Put it through the loop. And that's how you secure the weight with the surgeon's loop knot. Next, I'm going to grab a hook. Okay, let's say I'm catfishing. I want a big piece of bait close to the bottom. So I'm going to grab my circle hook. I'm going to put the dropper loop knot through. I'm going to, again, a little trick here is to give it a twist. This way, when the loop goes through, it'll secure a little bit better. Tighten it down. And now you can tell when you put this lure down or your bait down, it's going to be much closer to the bottom in that near bottom strike zone versus your high-low rig. And so there you have it. There is your Kentucky rig. So here's your swivel, again secured by one of our loop knots, either figure 8 or surgeon's loop knot. Here's our dropper loop knot. Now for the Kentucky rig, we made this dropper loop knot quite large. This way, when the weight is on the bottom, my bait is going to be closer to the bottom versus the high-low rig. You'll see in stores that they'll have these rigs made up where they're just a hook attached to a rig, and that's exactly for the reason of either a high-low rig or a Kentucky rig, honestly. You're meant to take these loops and put it on your high-low rig. However, you don't have to buy these. You can tie all this. No fear, Johnny Fishalot showed you exactly what to do in order to tie these rigs, and I'm going to show you how you can apply them to the Kentucky rig or a high-low rig. And so, you know, you can see these beads. This is more to catch the fish a lot versus have the fish a lot catch more fish. And, you know, there's a lot of tackle like that. All right, and so now a great trick in order to be able to be as versatile as possible, either with a Kentucky rig or a high-low rig, is simply to make your own extension of these hooks. So, of course, your first step is to snell the hook. Now, fortunately, Johnny Fishalot showed you exactly how to do this with either a uni knot or a knotless knot. And, of course, my favorite is the knotless knot. So I'm just going to tie it really fast. Again, we're just going to make our wraps. Again, 7 wraps will do you just fine. I think that was about 7. I don't know. I can't count and tie knots at the same time, apparently. You're going to slip that through. Again, the tag line is going to go towards the direction of your hook. You're going to tighten it down. There you go. You just snelled your hook in about 3 seconds. Not a big deal at all. That saved you about $2. Next, you're going to move up your line, and you're just going to create another loop knot. So it could be a surgeon's loop knot or a figure 8 knot, figure of 8 knot. Again, figure of 8 is good for me, so let's do that one. I'm simply going to twist the line. There you go. You got the 8. You know it's good. Tighten it down. And that's it. And there you go. So now you have exactly what you were going to buy from the store, only you just made it yourself. This is the exact same thing, only, you know, this took you about less than a minute to make. And all you had to do is just have a hook and some line. All right, now let me show you where this comes into play. So here's our high-low rig again, okay? Here's our high hook, here's our low hook, and here's our weight. So you're fishing and you make the determination, all right, my fish are hitting closer to the bottom and I want to present my lure or my bait closer to the bottom. This is where these loop knots really come into play. Now I just showed you how to tie your own rig, something very similar to this that you would buy in the store. And so all you're going to do is you're going to feed the rig that you just made through your dropper loop knot and tighten it down, and that's it. And now you have the option to attach your rig that you just made, a little extension of your rig, just with a snell of a hook and a loop knot. You attach that to your dropper loop knot, and now you have more of a Kentucky rig where this hook and your bait is going to be presented closer to the bottom next to your weight. Now, if you determine that the fish are feeding higher off the bottom, not just on the bottom, you could simply take this off, reattach your hook, something like this, and you just put the hook straight onto your main line via the dropper loop knot, and again, you're good to go. So that's the versatility of knowing just a few of these loop knots and a few of these snelling techniques. You could pretty much variate your knots the best you want, and you can make whatever rig you want in order to meet the situation of fishing that you're in. Again, you could have a combination between a Kentucky rig and a high-low rig, something like this, where you have your weight on the bottom, your hook closer to the bottom, and then you have a high hook just like this. So this is often called a double hook Kentucky rig. All this is a high-low rig with a high hook and a hook towards the bottom that's going to bring your bait closer to your weight. Let me show you exactly how I use something like this for saltwater fish like blackfish or a tog. It's the same exact type of rig. You literally have your dropper loop knot with your weight, and now all you're going to use is what's called a stinger rig for blackfish. This is something I just used for blackfish. You can see I just snelled my hook right here. I put a second hook on that slides up and down so I can put two hooks into a crab as easy as I can. And then at the top is again a loop knot. This is just a surgeon's loop knot, and this is going to secure the same exact way to the Kentucky rig. So now you're combining two more rigs, a stinger rig with a blackfish rig, that really is just yet another variation of a Kentucky rig or a high-low rig. And so now you start to realize, once you start mastering the high-low rig, a couple of these really essential rigs, you can modify them however you need to in order to catch whatever fish you're after, whether that's blackfish, whether that's flounder, whatever the case might be. And there you have it. And this is blackfishing. This is literally a blackfish rig that I use all the time. I just got done using it, actually, as you can tell by how beat up this leader material is. All right, next up, Fishalots, let's talk about the Carolina rig. Now, again, all a Carolina rig is just you're going to take a weight, you're going to put it on your main line, and this weight is going to be able to travel freely up and down your line up until it connects to your actual rig, something like this. So now a Carolina rig, again, is going to be made the exact same way that I just showed you in terms of the high-low rig and that extension to the high-low rig. You're simply going to have a swivel, you're going to have your main line, and you're going to connect your swivel to a main line, just like this. And this is a good example of where you could use a polymer knot or a TRILENE knot. I'm going to use a polymer knot right here. You're just going to simply make your loop, and then you're going to pass your hook and everything through the loop and tighten it down, and that is your polymer knot. Again, a very easy, very effective knot for connecting just about anything. So now, this is a Carolina rig. You have the weight and the knot. Now, I said beads earlier are important for certain applications, and this is a good reason to use a bead right here. The reason why you want to use a bead is because over time, this weight, as you suspend fish or as you present your bait, however you want, is going to constantly be hitting this polymer knot. And the more it hits the polymer knot, the weaker the knot is going to become. And so to prevent the weakening of your knot, all you do is connect a bead. This way this little plastic is running into your knot, not the full weight of an 8-ounce piece of lead or whatever lead you happen to be using, and you won't weaken your knot. So in this case, your Carolina rig is for a piece of bait. I use this combination all the time for catfish fishing. I think suspend fishing for catfish is just one of the most fun ways to catch the fish, and this is really the rig that I prefer, is a Carolina rig. Now take a look. As the weight comes down, it hits the bead and not the knot, and that's exactly what you want. So that's the advantage of a bead right here in terms of your fishing rigs. Not so much when you're in the store and you see a bead next to a hook and you think, oh, that looks nice, fish must like red next to my hook, I'm gonna buy it. The fish don't care, especially when you're fishing with bait. So this bead really comes in handy for things like this on your rigging. This is a Carolina rig, one of the easiest to tie rigs, and honestly this is one of the most popular rigs among fishalots out there, either bass fishalots or fishalots just looking to use bait. Okay, and very similar to the Carolina rig is the knocker rig, but there's one key difference between the knocker rig and the Carolina rig, and that of course again is the strike zone. So if your strike zone of the fish you're after is right on the bottom, then this is the rig for you, and that is the knocker rig. So first off, you have to snell your hook. Now let's use my personal favorite way to snell the hook, and that is the knotless knot. Again, all you're going to do is wrap it 5 to 7 times is perfectly good. I think that was 7. You're going to take your tag end and you're going to put it through the eye, again towards the point of the hook, right? And that is to ensure that the hook gets turned in the fish's mouth. And there you go, you're done. You're snelled, ready to go. Now, here's the main difference between the knocker rig and the Carolina rig, and I'm going to show you right now. You're going to attach your weight to the same connection as your hook. So now your weight is going to slide all the way down until the hook itself. And this will keep your bait pinned to the bottom in that direct bottom strike zone. And this is opposed to the Carolina rig, where the weight is in the near bottom strike zone. So there you go. So basically what I'll do is I'm going to cast this out, and of course during your cast you might get some separation between the hook and the weight, and then you're going to reel this up until the hook meets the weight, and now you're on the bottom, and that is your strike zone right here. This is a fantastic rig to be using when you're using bait and fish are literally rooting around. And then of course using one of the loop knots, you're going to attach your swivel here, and let's just do a surgeon's loop knot just to keep switching it up. There you go, there's your surgeon's loop knot. You tighten it up, you're good to go. And what I recommend for the knocker rig is make sure that you're using line that is much lighter than your main line. And the reason for this is if you break off the fish is going to be carrying around whatever lead you're using because the weight is within the same stretch of rigging as your hook. So the fish is going to be attached to the hook and the weight is going to slide down to the swivel and the fish is going to be stuck towing this thing around and the fish is going to die. So instead, if this breaks because this is lighter than your main line, the pieces of this line that are going to break are either going to be by your hook. It's most likely going to be this right here where your swivel is, and that'll be perfect because the weight will be free. See that? The weight will slide free and the fish will just carry around a small hook with him with a little bit of monofilament, and that won't kill the fish. So now it only makes sense after talking about the knocker rig to get to an even easier rig that is used by most fishalots out there, especially beginner fishalots, and that is the Texas rig. And the Texas rig, again, is just a weight that's going to slide down your main line onto your hook, which is going to be attached to a lure, usually a soft plastic of some kind. So the first step in this is you're going to take your weight and you're going to put it onto your line just like that. And the flat end of the weight should be facing the tag end of your line because this is what's going to come up against your hook. So you slide that up and now you're just going to tie in your hook. And that's going to be the rig, the Texas rig. Slide up your hook. Again, you could use a polymer knot, you could use a TRILENE knot, whatever knot you like. In this case, let's go with a CLINCH knot. This is kind of a beginner's rig, so let's use what's typically known as a beginner's knot, or knot that all beginners basically start with. So there you go. You make your twist 5 to 7 times. Again, you're going to take your tag end. You're going to pass it through the loop you just made. You're going to grab the tag end, of course, and keep it tight the whole time you cinch the knot down. And there it is. Just as easy as that. You have the clinch knot tied. You're going to clear up the tag end. There you go. And now that's it. That's the Texas rig. Again, that took maybe, I don't know, 20 seconds to make right there, and you're all set up. So now you got to do is you got to attach your worm. So you're going to take your worm just like this, and you're going to make sure that it's straight on the hook. Anytime you're using artificials and soft plastics on a hook, you just want to make sure it's straight. So you're going to hook that. You're going to slide it up your hook just like that. And now a quick trick here is if you have your hook, you could literally just lay it up against the worm or the soft plastic and see where the hook is coming out. That would make this straight. What you do then is you grab it with your thumb, and I know I'm going to hook just in front of my thumb to make sure the worm stays straight on my hook. Just like that. And there you go. That is a straight worm rigged up for the Texas rig. And another little trick is, you see the hooks poking through right there. What you could do is you could take the worm, just push it up a little bit, and then just put a little tip over the hook, and you can make that weedless. So there's your straight worm, and there's your Texas rig, just like that. And the weight is going to slide down to the worm, and you could work this worm through the water column as you see fit. What's going to happen is when you tug on the weight, right, you're going to give it a little twitch, and so the worm is going to come up off the water column or off the bottom into the water column. And the weight, of course, is going to sink down first, and that worm is going to slowly descend right after the weight in close proximity to the weight, and that slow descent is what's going to trigger those bites. That worm is always in the near bottom strike zone with this type of technique, and that slow descent to the bottom is what triggers those bites. Then you're going to twitch it up again, same kind of thing. Another benefit is with the weight close to the worm's head like that, is you could keep your line tight and you could actually work the worm on the bottom. You know, like a tap tap pause or a twitch twitch pause, and that worm is just going to drag across the bottom just like that, and that will also trigger bites where fish that are looking for their bait or their next meal right on the bottom. So you have near bottom strike zone and right on the bottom strike zone covered with this type of rigging. Okay, and so for a Santee Cooper rig, all you really need to tie this is you could use a 3-way swivel with a clip that will connect either a weight if you're casting or a weight if you're dragging, and this is a dragging weight, a hook, and a peg float or a different kind of float. Now I'm going to show you a couple of ways to tie the Santee Cooper rig where you don't need quite as much terminal tackle, and you could use, that's right, you guessed it, loop knots to make all your connections instead of a swivel. And so, but first I'll show you the typical way that people will tie this, and many people do utilize the 3-way swivel. So let's get going. Okay, first up, just like many of the rigs that we're going to tie, I'm going to snell a hook. Now, you could use either the knotless knot or a uni knot. You know, for this, let's go ahead and use a uni knot. We're just going to make our loop, okay, just like that, and we're going to pass the line through 5 to 7 times. Okay, so there's our 5 wraps. We're going to pull it tight, and there you go. You have a snelled hook. Just like that. So there you go again, saving you some money in rigging. That's the goal of Johnny Fishalot. Make this easy, make it quick, make it painless. Now what you're going to do is you're going to slide on your float. So again, your float, you really want it to be about 2 to 4 inches away from the hook. And that is simply because you want the bait suspended off the bottom. Now this is a long rig, so typically people will make this 1 to 2 feet. You can make it however long you want. It just depends on your fishing application. If you're casting, I will recommend you should make this shorter if you're casting, only because you're going to increase your risk of tangle if you're casting this around. So there you go. So there's your peg float. That's about 2 inches away from the hook. So this will be suspended just like that, and the bait will be right under the peg float. So then you got about 2 feet or so of your leader. Again, if you're fishing from the shore and you're casting, I would make this smaller, maybe a foot, maybe even less, depending how good of a caster you are and how far you're casting. But this will limit the amount of tangles you will get. And then you're just going to attach a 3-way swivel just like this. Now again, here you could use a polymer knot, a TRILENE knot, or clinch knot. Let's go ahead and use a clinch knot. Now I will say, if you're tying with a three-way swivel, the polymer knot becomes ineffective after you tie the first rig, because now, keep in mind, you have to pass the entire rig through the loop you make with the polymer knot. So really here, I would recommend using the clinch knots or the TRILENE knot. So let's just use a clinch knot, grab it, make sure it's tight, tighten it down. There you go, there's your clinch knot. And that is the hook part, that is the rig part of the Santee Cooper rig. Next, you're going to tie on your main line, and again, at this point, it becomes cumbersome to pass 2 feet of line of your rig through the polymer knot. So I would recommend a TRILENE knot or a clinch knot. You know, let's do a TRILENE knot here just to switch it up. Let me get my line out of the way. So you pass the line in once, you pass it through twice, you create your loop just like that, and now you're going to make your twists. So again, 5 to 7 times, just like we always do. There we go. And now you're going to pass it through the loop that you just created. There's your loop. You're going to pass it on through, grab your tag end, tighten it all down, and there you go. There is the TRILENE knot. There you go. That is a super tough knot. Not going anywhere. I would recommend that over the clinch knot. It's just got an incredible breaking strength. And again, the double loops on the hook or the lure, or in this case the swivel, just adds that much more protection. Okay, and this is basically it. Then if you're drifting or dragging, which I would really recommend if you're in a kayak and there's a lot of wake, or there's a lot of boat traffic, you're bouncing up and down, you can't keep your baits in the strike zone because of waves or boats, this is really a great option because this weight is going to be dragging on the bottom, and your line and your bait is going to remain in the strike zone regardless of how much your boat is rocking. And that is the true advantage of drifting for fish with the Santee Cooper rig, especially if you're fishing in the near bottom strike zone, but not on the bottom. So this way, this lure is going to sit here just like this, no matter how much your boat is rocking, no matter how much boats are waking you, no matter how bad the sea is, no matter how bad the swell is, you're still going to be able to use a drifting weight like this and drag on the bottom and keep your bait in the strike zone. Now, if you're fishing from shore, same thing would apply. Just as I said before, you're just going to attach a regular weight like that. And that is the Santee Cooper rig. So now let's discuss the importance of the loop knots that I talked about. What if you're sitting there and you're saying, hey, Johnny Fishalot, you know, I want to go out, I want to use a Santee Cooper rig. I forgot all my swivels. I don't like swivels. I'm going to be honest with you. You really don't need swivels if you know the loop knots. The loop knots that I just showed you, because loop knots are an excellent connection for your lines, and they're actually a much less diameter connection than swivels are, right? It's just less gear. The less terminal tackle you have on your line, the better it is. The more simplistic your rigging is, the better it is. So now let me show you what happens if you don't have swivels or you don't want to use swivels. Well, no problem. Again, we're going to snell our hook. Let's use the knotless knot this time. I'm just to show you how easy these knots really are, how quick they are once you become good at them. There we go, 7 turns. You're going to take your leader. Now, remember, the longer the leader, the more difficult it is to tie the knotless knot, because you're just going to have more leader to deal with. But look, super easy. A lot of leader line. Not a problem. Trim this up. Okay, we're going to slip on our peg float. Same deal. You know what, better yet, let's say you don't have a peg float. Let's say you just have a regular float, or your bait's so big that you need, one of these big floats to keep your lure off the bottom. Well, no problem, because again, I showed you the uni knot. So now you're going to see the versatility of using these knots with different rigging. Let's say you're using a big hunk of heavy meat and you need something to really keep it up, and you only have this little peg float. You don't think it's going to work. So, or let's just say you don't have a peg float. What do? Well, don't worry about it, because Johnny Fishalot showed you the knots that you could use in order to make any rig for any situation, regardless of what gear you may have brought or you may have forgot. And these floats very often come with a piece of line, and this is meant to tie a stopper knot. And guess what a stopper knot is? A stopper knot is just simply a uni knot. And if you don't have this line, well, don't worry about it. You could always use monofilament. So if you bring monofilament with you or any sort of line with you, you could tie a stopper knot just the same as you can with a piece of line that comes with the float. So all you do is you locate on the main line where exactly you want to stop the bobber. In this case, you want it 2 to 4 inches away from your hook. So all you do is you grab the line, you're going to make a loop just like we did before, just like that. And now you're going to take the tag end and you're going to pass it through this loop. So there you go. 1, 2. This is it. This is a uni knot, by the way. And a uni knot is a stopper knot. So you're just going to pass it through. Sometime you can pass it through 1 time, 2 time, whatever. And now it's adjustable. You could trim this off so that it's not dangling from your line and catching weeds. Now, keep in mind, the more wraps that you make with this, the harder it is to move up and down the line. So if you really want to put some force behind it and move it, you make more wraps. Now I did 4 wraps, I think, there, and that's going to be enough to stop the float, just like that, and have your hook dangling 2 to 4 inches behind the float. And that is just a uni knot that we turned into a stopper knot that I can now adjust up and down the line. Take a look. If I want this closer to the hook, let's say I'm like, oh, that's too far away, I want a little bit closer. You just push it down. There you go. Now it's closer to the hook. Let's say it's too close and you're like, oh, you know what? I want this a little bit further away. You just push it away and there you go. Now it's further away. And that is a stopper knot. Pure and easy. So now with these tag lines, of course, what you can do is just cut them. Again, this works equally well with monofilament. And that's it. That's a stopper knot, and you can adjust this as so to prevent the bobber from moving any further up your line. And that's it. That's all you got to do. All right, so next up, you're going to grab the tag end of your line, and you're going to make one of the loop knots. So I'm a big fan of the figure 8 knot. I think it's just a little bit stronger than the surgeon's loop knot. So again, we're just going to make this as I showed you before. There you go. There's your figure 8. You know you did it correctly. Cinch it down. You're good to go. So that is your rig end of your line. Now let's go to your main line here. And you're like, oh no, Johnny Fishalot, I forgot all my swivels. How am I going to do this without a swivel? Well, don't worry. So here's your swivel. I showed you the dropper loop knot. So here's the tag end of your line. Let's say this is going to connect to this part of the of your rig. You know, same thing. Let's do a figure of 8 knot. You technically don't need any swivels if you know these knots, and that's the real advantage to knowing all these knots as they relate to rigging. This really covers you for any situation you might be in. So there you go. There's another figure of 8 knot, and now you're like, well, where am I going to put my weight? Well, don't worry. You're going to tie a dropper loop knot. So quite simply, you're going to make this dropper loop knot kind of big, just like I showed you for the Kentucky rig, and you're going to make your twists 5 to 7 times. Now I'm going to use my teeth here again. You're going to take your bottom line, pass it through the top. I'm going to use my teeth to cinch it. There you go. So now you have a pretty decent dropper loop knot right there. You're going to take your dragging weight, this big guy right here, and you're going to pass it through the dropper loop knot you just created. There you go. You pass the dropper loop knot through, and now you're going to pass this entire weight through the loop. So you're going to grab the weight, and you're going to pass it on through just like that. And there you go. Now your weight is secured to your main line, just like that via a dropper loop knot. All right, so now you have your main line right here. This is going to connect to your fishing reel and your rod. You have your dropper loop knot that's connecting to your dragging weight. And then you have your figure of 8 loop knot that you created at the end of your main line. So you also have your figure of 8 loop knot that you created on the hook end of your line that's going to have your bobber and your hook for your Santee Cooper rig. And just like the high-low rig, you're just going to take one loop knot and pass it through the other. So here you go. You pass through your figure of 8 loop knot. You're going to take your hook. You're going to pass it on through. You're going to pass your whole bobber through, just like that, and there you go. That's your Santee Cooper rig without actually having any terminal tackle whatsoever outside of your hook. You have your hook, you have your bobber. We use a stopper knot. You could use this with a piece of line or with a piece of monofilament. We have our weight, and we use that to a dropper loop knot, and everything is connected via loop knots, either a surgeon loop knot or a figure of 8 loop knot. And all right, Fishalots, so this brings us to the hair rig. And this is absolutely one of my most favorite rigs to tie for carp or catfish. You'd be amazed at how many catfish will eat this rig as well as carp. And really all you need is a baiting needle and something to put on the hair. And let me explain to you what a hair is really quick. So everybody knows you have your hook here and you bait your hook. So basically you're going to take whatever it is, corn, you know, a piece of bait, whatever it might be, and you're actually going to put it onto the hook and then move it up the hook shank, and that's going to be your bait. The fish is going to come by, he's going to eat the bait off the hook, and you catch the fish. Well, the hair is this piece right here that comes off your hook. So a hair is anything that references a piece of line coming off your hook that's going to actually hold your bait instead of the hook itself holding the bait. So this is a hair rig tied together with an artificial piece of corn. I usually dunk this corn in some kind of scent, which you can see on my other videos, which I'll leave in the description below. And as the fish sucks in the bait here, he or she also inadvertently sucks in the hook. And then of course I have a little angle in here at about 90 degrees, which ensures the hook turns in the fish's mouth and I get the fish in the bottom of the mouth each and every time. So think of a circle hook as always being advertised of catching the fish in the corner of the mouth. Well, this type of hair rig that I like to tie is excellent for always catching the fish in the bottom of the mouth as the fish tries to suck in this hair. So let me show you how to tie it. Okay, and so to tie this rig, I'm going to start off, lo and behold, with one of the loop knots. So for this knot, I'm going to start with a figure of 8 loop knot. And again, for carp, you really want to make these baits as small as you can. So you see I just made my first loop, I made my second loop. That's pretty small, and so this is where a baiting needle really helps, is I could actually then again turn this loop towards me like so. There's my figure of 8. I'm going to come down and grab the other line, and that allows me to have a very small figure of 8 loop knot. And that is really a great little tip to have very small knots, is using something like a baiting needle just like this. And you can find these anywhere. Just type in baiting needle in Google and you know they'll come right up. And here's the second part that your baiting needle is really going to come into play. So this is a boilie. These are boiled baits, hence the term boilie. And again, these are just perfect for catfish and carp alike. This is a halibut boilie, so I typically use this for catfish when catfish are around. All right, so now here's where your baiting needle comes into play. I'm going to take my baiting needle, I'm going to shove it into the boilie. Okay, so now I have my boilie on my baiting needle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that hair, the loop that we just created using a figure of 8 loop knot, and I'm going to hook it with the baiting needle, and I'm going to rotate down this little switch. You see that little switch there? That's to secure the knot while I move the lure in place, or the bait in place. So here we go, I secure it, I move it down, and now I move the boilie on over the figure of 8 loop knot. Okay, now I have my boilie onto my hair using the baiting needle. Now all I do is I release that latch right there and I'm good to go. And that is your baiting needle. All right, so now we have our boilie on the hair itself, but now you need to prevent the boilie from slipping off of your line. So what you need now is just bait stops. You could buy these anywhere. They're super cheap. You can see they come in a row. What I recommend here is a little trick, is keep the bait stop in the line. One of these is an individual bait stop, but they're very small. And you try to get the hair, the loop, through the bait, through just one of the bait stops, just like that. So now you have it. Now I'm going to move the boilie up to secure it on the bait stop. Just like that, tighten it down. Now you can see that the bait stop is secured on the boilie. all I'm going to do is cut away the other one. Just like that. All right, now we're good to go. So now we have our bait stop in place. Our boilie is in place. I'm going to tighten it down, and that's not going anywhere. So now we have our boilie and our bait stop secured on our hair. The next step, of course, is to move our hook into position. And so the way we do this is we're going to slide our hook down the line. Now, generally what you want to do here is you want the hook about where the boilie is going to touch the tip of the hook. So just like that. That's about perfect for this size boilie, is just right there. And here's the huge advantage of the knotless knot. Basically, I'm going to pinch the hook right in place, and I'm just going to start wrapping. And that will ensure that this hook is not going anywhere. So there's our knotless knot. We're going to take the tag end. Of course, we're going to put it in the eye of the hook, going towards the point of the hook. We're going to secure it. There you go. The knotless knot is secured. And that is a hair rig in and of a nutshell. Now, this is basically your hair rig, but I'm going to give you a tip. I'm going to keep this rig super short. You can tell that's not very long, and the reason for that is because when a carp or a catfish comes and picks up this lure, I want that fish to be immediately in contact with the weight. So as the fish picks it up, it's in contact with the weight, and then this will turn, the hook will turn in the fish's mouth, and of course put the hook in the bottom of the fish's jaw. And so at this point, I'm going to use another figure of 8 loop knot. So I'm just going to secure my knot here, double up my line. I'm going to make my loop. I'm going to turn that loop towards myself, and this is where a baiting needle really comes into play. Watch this, just like this. Going to grab it, bring it through, and there's my figure of 8 loop knot. So that's where your baiting needle really comes into play, is it's just super convenient to tie these very small knots. And so for carp, of course, you want these knots to be pretty small because you really don't want them detecting the line or the baits. And so there you go. That is a hair rig. And that is the same as this hair rig right here. This is a more advanced hair rig. And I'm going to show you how to tie what's called a blowback rig to ensure that this hook turns in the fish's mouth. But this is a basic rig. This is basically all you need. You just need to know how to tie the hair using a figure of 8 loop knot. You need to know a knotless knot. And then I secured the other end of this with another figure of 8 loop knot. And all right, so now I'm going to show you an advanced method of tying your hair rigs, and that is called blowback rigs. And the reason these are called blowback rigs is because of this little guy right here called rig rings. And these rig rings are basically what's going to ensure that this hook is going to turn in the fish's mouth and catch that fish in the bottom of the mouth each and every time. And I'm going to show you that here in a minute. Next up is hook kickers. Again, all that is a 90-degree angle that you're going to put in the hook to ensure that when pressure is put on, basically when the fish picks up this hook and meets the weight is going to turn this hook in the bottom of the fish's mouth with this 90-degree angle I put on the hook. So that is hook kickers. Of course, you're going to need your fake corn or boilies and bait stops like I showed earlier. You're going to need some sharp hooks. I always recommend wide gap hooks. These are Kama hooks. These are super sharp, and these are number 6s. You could go as high as number 4s or even bigger. It just depends what you're fishing for. But for carp and catfish, you'd be amazed how much large catfish you could catch with these really small hooks. So I like number 6s. That's what I go with. So number 6, sharp, wide gap hook. Of course, your fishing clips. This makes it easy to exchange rigs. So maybe I want a different type of hair rig. I want to go from just a regular hair rig to a blowback rig. I could just use these fishing clips and swap them out. And then of course, a helicopter sleeve. This just makes it super easy with your swivels. You slide this over your micro swivels and you're good to go. All right. So let's get into it. All right, and first step in tying our blowback rig is, of course, the figure of 8 loop knot. So I'm going to make a knot So I'm going to make my figure of loop knot. Now I'm going to make this literally as small as I possibly can. And the reason for that is because I'm just going to put this little tiny piece of corn on there as my hair. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my baiting needle to make my figure of 8. I'm going to hook what's going to be my hair and now bring it through my line. Just like that. So I wouldn't be able to do this without a baiting needle because these loops are so small. There's our hair first and foremost. And now in comes our baiting needle one more time because we're going to have to bait the hair now. So let's move the line out of the way for right now. Here's a piece of corn. Stick the piece of corn on the baiting needle. Push it through just like that. We're going to hook our loop with the baiting needle. Move the latch over, and now we're going to slide our corn onto the hair. Just like that. Now we're going to open this up a little bit as much as we can because now we're going to put our stopper. This little yellow guy right here, that's going to be our stopper to this. Now this is easier. I like these type of stoppers because they're grooved. So basically you slide that in just like that. You could actually do it with your fingers right there as opposed to the other method I showed you where you really need the whole link. And so basically you put the hair through these little grooves and that makes it really easy just like that to secure the corn to the bait stop. And that's it. And of course our next stop here is going to be that rig ring. And you can see that right there. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this on the line close to the hair rig. And you're going to slide it down however long you want the rig to be. Okay, so for these rigs, I like to keep this very short. So you can see that rig ring right there is about a 1/2 inch from my corn. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to tie an overhand knot to secure that rig ring to the corn here. So I'm just going to put this line through my rig ring. I'm going to hold on to the rig ring at the spot that I want it, which is about a 1/2 inch from the corn. Tighten it down, and there you go. So that is the distance between my hook and the actual corn. Okay, and so next up is the hook and this rig ring. So I'm basically going to take the rig ring. I'm going to put the hook through the ring. Just like that. And I want the rig ring to stay at about where the hook begins to turn. And now this is your blowback rig right here. This is basically it. And now, of course, we're going to use our knotless knot. So now, of course, we're going to use our knotless knot. We're going to pinch that down. Take my line. We're going to do our wraps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to pass that line back through facing the hook. Okay, that is your knotless knot. Now our hook is secured. That is your blowback rig right there. So the ring is secured to the hook. The ring is about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch away from the hair itself. Now we're secured there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to attach our hook kickers to the hook to make sure that we're going to put that 90-degree angle coming off the shank of the hook so that we're going to ensure this hook turns right in the bottom of the fish's mouth. And there's our hook kicker right there. And all we're going to do is we're going to slide this down our line just like so. There you go. And it's going to go over our hook. Just like that. And there you go. So there's the 90-degree angle that we're talking about. It's secured onto the hook. And now this basically ensures that when the carp picks up the bait and it starts dragging it, look at that, it's going to turn right into the carp's mouth. I didn't do anything. It's just biting right into my hand as I speak. And that is the beauty of this rig. The carp's going to pick this up. He's going to start to turn. And there you go. That angle in the line is going to create that turn of the hook to make sure it goes in the bottom of the mouth. All right, so let's finish off this rig now with either a figure of 8 loop knot, of course, or a surgeon's loop knot. This is where the micro swivel is going to go. Again, just to switch it up so everybody stays fresh on these knots, I'll use a surgeon's loop knot for this one. I'm going to pass it through once, pass it through twice. That's all you need. I'm going to secure it. And there you go. So there you go. That is a blowback rig. But now we're going to add some micro swivels to this just to make it easy to swap out. These are tiny swivels, and you're going to see why I use these with carp. There we go. So now we attached our micro swivel to the bait. We're almost ready to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have another swivel, a fisherman's clip, and a helicopter sleeve. So first step, we're going to take this helicopter sleeve and we're going to slide it onto our main line. You're going to slide it on just like this. Okay, and now we're going to connect our swivel. Again, a polymer knot is just a really good option for tying on swivels that you need. There you go. Pass it through. Such an easy and great knot, the polymer knot. I always love it. I've always used it. Tighten it down. There we go. And now you can see really where all these knots really come into play. So now I'm going to take my fisherman's clip and I'm going to clip it onto my swivel. Okay, so now I have my fisherman's clip secured. Now with the fisherman's clip, I can now clip on this micro swivel and my hair rig. So let's go ahead and do that. And you can't see it, but you know, there's the little hooks in the fisherman's clip. Or called the fishing clip, I should say. There we go, slide that through, and there we go. So now I have my main swivel on the fishing clip along with my micro swivel. Now watch this. Now I'm going to slide down the helicopter sleeve, okay, and it's going to connect everything together. So it's going to slide over that first swivel and slide over the fisherman's clip just like that. So now my micro swivel has no chance to make its way out of the fishing clip. And so this is a blowback hair rig. That's exactly what it looks like. And it's just a really great way to catch a lot of carp and catfish. Now, you could also combine this with method lead. This is my preferred method to use this, is I just put a pack bait, I squeeze it around the method lead, and look, this is a Carolina rig. So the method lead I slide on, it can slide up and down my main line freely. And then of course it's going to come into contact with my helicopter sleeve and my fishing clips on my micro swivels, and it's going to stop it. So again, that's a combination of rigs together, a hair rig and a Carolina rig, to make a carp. Oh, and there you go. There's a piece of pack bait that just fell off of my rig. You can tell how well it fits in here. But there you go. That's a combination of rigs. So you got a Carolina rig and a hair rig plus a blowback rig. And this just makes for an absolutely deadly cats and carp combination right here. And so that is just a grand finale, if you will, a perfect example of if you know your knots. We use a surgeon's loop knot. We used a figure of 8 knot. We're using a Carolina rig combined with a hair rig. We're using polymer knots on our swivels. You name it. If you know how to do these things, you could really create a perfect rig that could fish anywhere in your fishing zone or in that strike zone. And that is the most important thing. You know where the fish is, you know where the strike zone is, and then you create a rig just like this that can maximize your chances of putting that bait in front of the fish's mouth and enticing them to bite. And all right, Fishalots, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you really got something out of this seminar and you're ready to go out there and catch yourself some more fish with these rigs. If you like some more bite-size style content just like this, make sure to click on these end cards and it'll take you right to the videos that you want to see.